So, we're going to do something fun today. We are going to have a smoke session. That's right. I want all the smoke. Um, we're going to talk about Bullshido and McDojos and all those martial arts myths out there. I have a whole um, category of martial arts myths in my channel that I've discussed, but today we're going to discuss them together. Um, let's go through all the martial arts myths. Let's talk about what makes something a fake martial art. Let's talk about the McDojos out there. Let's talk about Bullshido. Bullshido being, fake martial arts, or the stuff that martial arts con men do, like George Dillman. He's the classic example of Bullshido. George Dillman with his no touch knockouts. So going from there, we're going to talk about everything. And I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers. Some people are going to disagree with me, but that's cool. That's what it's about. It's a smoke session. I'm not uh I'm not sparing anyone. I'm going after them all. So if it if your if your bull is the one that got gored, sorry, but this is a smoke session. So I want all the smoke, and yes, I will fight. I will fight, provided that we can record it so that I can post it for content. Aside from that, we can still be civil, and trolls will still get kicked out of the video here. I mean, out of the live stream. But yes, there's going to be a live smoke session. I want all the smoke when it comes to Bushido, McDojos, and all sorts of martial arts myths out there. All the fake martial arts, all the bad martial arts, all the useless martial arts, all the practices that seem dubious. Let's talk about all of that stuff. All of that stuff. And like I said, if people are confused about what I'm talking about with McDojos, I have a whole bunch of videos on my channel, under the listing martial arts myths, that discuss all those sorts of things. Because a lot of these things people still believe, but I think because of the internet age, and particularly with martial arts YouTubers, that I don't think a lot of people are as susceptible to these martial arts myths as they were in the 80s and 90s, as they were largely put out by irresponsible editors at places like Black Belt Magazine, that would just publish articles and not question some of these dubious things that people put out there, like George Dillman, like I just mentioned, so-called ninja master Stephen K. Hayes, or his teacher, the Grandmaster, um, whatever the guy's name is, who now has purple hair. Like all these charlatans. Let's talk about all of that Bushido. And like I said, we're not going to spare anybody. We're not going to spare any style. No art, and that's how it is. And since no one has said anything yet, I think I can start off with a few. So, a popular martial art, especially amongst suburban white women, let's be honest, it's Krav Maga. Um, the martial art is largely bullshit. And as I mentioned in the previous stream, Krav Maga was just whatever hand to hand combat training was going on, when people went to the Israeli Defense Force for boot camp. It wasn't an organized martial art until it was brought over here and marketed as a martial art. But prior to then, it was whatever the instructor decided to teach them. What's up, Arkantas? So again, guys, this is a smoke session for like talking about all sorts of McDojos and Bushido and martial arts myths. Okay. So my issue with Krav Maga is that they don't like to pressure test their techniques. They claim that they're too lethal to to practice in sparring or competition, but they drill them. So just common sense would say, how would you know something works if you don't actually apply it in a situation where it can be possibly defeated? You wouldn't. And the biggest Bushido part of Krav Maga are their notorious gun disarms. Guys, that's the easiest way to meet your maker is by practicing some gun disarms, doing these drills instead of like, making sure these things work. Like even if you take tactical firearm training, they'll tell you at the best of times gun disarms work 50-50, which means you don't know. Meaning you shouldn't risk your life on something that can only work 50% of the time, which means anything that works only 50% of the time means it's literally just a matter of chance. That's not a skill. That's just random chance. So now, to their credit, there are some Krav Maga schools that actually do spar and compete, but those are so rare that by far most Krav Maga schools are known for just doing these repetitive drills that have no practical application. But I guess it gives people the confidence that they can defend themselves, which originally was the purpose in Israeli Defense Force, was to give people, confidence in their abilities. So, what's up? What's up, Mahal? Mrs. Contrarian is in the house. Ned, this live stream is about martial arts myths, Bushido. Bushido meaning like fake martial arts and martial arts charlatans within the martial arts community, and McDojos, like some of those places you go to train and they're pretty useless. Craven, what's going on? So, I thought this would be a fun session. Like I said, I want all the smoke as far as martial arts myths, because I plan on like just making fun of all the bad martial arts out there. I've practiced a few. People I know practice a few. T Live says they ban MMA guys fighting King Fu masters and filming in China. So yeah, there was this guy, and he wasn't even a good MMA fighter. He was like a mediocre MMA practitioner at best. And he was going around challenging these masters, and he would just destroy them, like just with like a basic punch or knee or something. And he got into a lot of heat. I mean, he was Chinese himself. He was a Chinese national, but he practiced MMA because there are MMA gyms all over China. But he was challenging you know, what was revered out there, which is the traditional kung fu styles. Mind you, he's not doing anything new. Bruce Lee literally did this like 60 odd years ago. He said that most he said that classical Chinese martial arts were mostly bullshit. He said learning how to do forms was like learning how to swim on land. Like, this is nothing new. Like, Chinese martial arts has been called out for being ineffective literally over 60 years ago. So the MMA guy was just basically proving Bruce's point and everyone else's point that classical martial arts aren't useful in a realistic application for fighting or self-defense. Let's see. He says so Steven Seagal is a topic. No, we can get on. We can lean on him too, absolutely. But it's not just about him; it's about everybody. Before a lot of you guys jumped in, I gave I think the prototype of a martial arts charlatan, which is George Dillman. If you guys don't remember, he practices the no touch knockouts, where he can just basically defeat you with his chi. He can go right. So, and skeptics have debunked him because, if you're not one of his students or someone willing to go along with the bullshit, then they're not going to fall out when he wiggles his fingers at you. And to Aikido's credit, Aikido isn't a bullshit martial art. It's just the way that Steven Seagal markets it is because Aikido was never meant to be a martial art used for fighting. The founder Morihei Ueshiba saw Aikido mainly as a spiritual martial art like Tai Chi. But again, just like Tai Chi, some people think you can use Tai Chi in fighting, and you cannot. It's not useful in that way. Most of the internal martial arts are useless in fighting. Tai Chi, Chi Kung, Aikido, um, Tian Shan Pai, and all those other things. So whatever. Beta Soy Boy says all useless unless you have ground game. Yeah, that's bullshit too. I like I said, I want all the smoke today. I'm not sparing any martial art. BJJ is over marketed. They're not that great. No one on the streets of the Bronx, Baltimore, Philly, Chicago, Detroit, LA, Cleveland, Gary, Indiana, Trenton, New Jersey is about to sit there and fucking pull half guard on the fucking street. That's bullshit. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is full of shit. And yeah, I said it. They made their bones showing how tough they were by beating up people who practice capoeira. Anyone can beat up people from capoeira because that's a bullshit martial art too. So what? And they're not even jiu-jitsu, it's judo. Brazilian jiu-jitsu was literally based off of Kodokan judo. That was brought to them by one of the head students of the founder of judo, Jigoro Kano, back in like the 50s or 60s or whatever, when the Gracie family took it up. It's not jiu-jitsu, it's judo. So I get tired of people calling, when they say Brazilian jiu-jitsu, just calling it jiu-jitsu. It's not jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is an entire Japanese fighting system, which includes punches and kicks and throws and takedowns and submission fighting. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu only concentrates on the ground game, the Newaza. And Newaza is not that useful if you're dealing with someone who's going to have a weapon. And almost everyone you encounter on the street is probably going to have a weapon, making Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu very limited in its usefulness, except for like on one-on-one confrontations with an unarmed person. If dealing with multiple attackers, if you're dealing with someone with a weapon, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not the art to be using. It is overhyped. It was only so effective in the UFC because the Gracie brothers kept changing the fucking rules for their brother when he went to compete with people. They didn't allow him to fight other master grapplers in the first UFC or the second UFC. And when he was fighting people who were tough opponents, they kept changing the rules. At some point, it was like, oh well, you it's okay to grab to grab the uniform and stuff like that. Then at another time it was not okay to grab the uniform. Then it was like it's not okay to use hand protection. Like you can't wear gloves and all like like they were literally changing the rules. That's why they disinvited Bill Superfoot Wallace from basically being one of the judges in the second UFC because he called them out on their bullshit. Like they were doing whatever they needed to make sure that their brother um was like the best contestant. BJJ is overhyped. And most of those people do BJJ because they're out of shape and can't take a punch. So they rather do the ground game. So yeah, I said I want all the smoke. BJJ people can't take a punch, so they want to wrestle on the ground and tickle people with their pickle. I said it. Colombian Jeff says, "Yo, I'm back. What's up?" Arkansas Uber says, "I like the unarmed gun defense Bushido videos." Haha. Also, Steven Seagal cracks me up. Steven Seagal cracks everyone up. The thing was, back in the 90s, his movies were the shit. Like Hard to Kill and Above the Law were good. Mark for Death was good too, but Mark for Death was racist because it made me think that all Jamaicans like practice voodoo and were like out to like and sold drugs. So Mark for Death was bad because it made me think that all Jamaicans practice voodoo and dealt drugs, and that is so far from the truth. Especially growing up in a Jamaican community in Baltimore when I was a kid. So Logan says Kobe or MJ. So out of res- out of respect for Kobe, I'm not gonna. I don't want to participate in that, but obviously, when the standard that everyone is is compared to is always Michael Jordan, right? Like there's the best and then there's the GOAT. And those are different. Like someone who's currently the best might be better than the person who is like sort of the standard for everyone to aspire to. But the GOAT is the GOAT, and that's Michael Jordan when it comes to basketball, right? But Black Mamba is still up there with, very close to MJ. Like his dedication, like getting up like 3:30 in the morning to work out. Before his workout, he would do his own workout before the NBA workout. So he would get up 3:30, 4:30 in the morning just to do his own workout before they had an NBA workout. That's his level of dedication. That's why he was so good. You don't get that with most of these guys. Some of these guys are really talented, but they don't have the dedication. Michael Jordan has pointed that out himself a long time ago. He pointed out people like Kobe who had the dedication, who had that black mamba in. Then he pointed out other people who might have been just as talented, but they were lazy. People like Allen Iverson. So anyway, let's get back to martial arts. Is Aikido legit? Aries, yes, Aikido is legit, but what I was saying is that it's not a useful martial art for fighting or self defense. It's something that's more akin to a spiritual self expression, right? Like you can take some techniques from Aikido and adapt it, and apply them in a self defense situation, but the art overall is not made for self defense or fighting. If that answers your question, but it is a legit martial art. It's not fake. John says, "Give us some life wisdom, please." Well, this is strictly going to be on martial arts, so I'm giving you my unfiltered opinions about all these martial arts, like I just did with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, because I think a lot of the people in the BJJ world are a lot are following a cult. I think BJJ is largely a cult. The community. T Lavi 420 says only works if both guys are in on it. Iris Irie Pyrus says some punch defense combined with judo or BJJ might be solid. Yeah, so if you come from a Brazilian jiu-jitsu or judo background, I think if you learn some boxing, then you can be a your your fight game would be complete. But I don't think your fight game is going to be complete just through either using judo or BJJ. Judo is less than useful than BJJ, because it teaches you to take someone down to the ground and just try to get back up again, and that's not always possible. Like at least BJJ uh, they perfected the ground game, or what's called newaza, and there is newaza in judo because that's where Brazilian jiu-jitsu came from. It's just that they mastered it, and it might be more useful in many aspects than judo. But I like judo because it teaches you more of a stand-up grappling game, which is more useful. Because BJJ people always say, well, 70%, 70% or 80%, whatever bullshit percentage they want to use. They'll say 70% or 80%, sometimes 90% of all fights go to the ground. Well, guess what? All fights start fucking standing up. So again, I want the smoke. All fights start standing up. And here's the other thing. When you look at the actual footage coming from like closed captioning TV and police footage and stuff like that of actual fights that happen on the street, yes, a lot of them go to the ground, but guess what? Most of those fights that go to the ground are usually with law enforcement officials, because usually putting someone on the ground is the easiest way to apprehend them and arrest them, especially if they're resisting arrest. So they put them on the ground first, and then they arrest them. But when you look at the footage not coming from law enforcement, most of it most of it is striking. And out of that, when one of those strikers is actually trained, it usually results in a knockout. So Joe Toro, Kentaro said, "Oh my God, Black Panther, that's you." No, I wish I had T'Challa's money and affluence. He's a, I believe in Marvel, he's a trillionaire, to believe it or not. Harry Pierce, I absolutely agree with the half guard stuff. You guys start from the ground. Yeah, like the competition has gotten ridiculous in submission grappling where they allow them to start from the half guard. Is not realistic and it looks goofy. Like when most, like, so when most people look at competition who aren't, who like someone who's never trained in boxing, someone who's never trained in kickboxing or Muay Thai, they can watch a fight and still appreciate the skill and expertise of those fighters, even if they don't know exactly everything that they're doing. They don't know all the minutiae of like the footwork, the feinting, the combinations, the all of that stuff, right? But they recognize the skill. But when you look at some of these submission grappling fights, if you're not someone who's already in that world, it looks ridiculous. Like they'll see these people going to the half guard and just scooting over on their butt, literally butt scooting to meet to reach the other opponent to just basically pull him down and then just start grappling. That's not realistic. It's not realistic. Like you should start standing up and work to the guard. But but starting a competition where you're in the half guard already, it's not realistic and it looks ridiculous and it's a horrible it's a horrible look for the art. It's just as bad as taekwondo competition when they do all this little flicky foot fencing stuff. Again, that's right. I'm going at everybody. Taekwondo too, which is one of my favorite martial arts, but Taekwondo's going to get it too. The way the way they compete with these little stupid flicky foot kicks, it's just foot fencing. It looks stupid. It's not realistic. So I'm going after everybody. I think thanks for my like I said, I'm being blunt because I just want to be completely honest. Like most martial arts YouTubers will just, they'll sugarcoat things. I'm not. I'm gonna talk about everybody, even the martial arts that I do like. Chuck Liddell is overhyped. I haven't seen most of his fights, but he seems all right. I know he started from a karate background, so I haven't really seen his fights. I think the only time I saw him was when they used to have the UFC reality show. I think he was on that. I've heard that Chuck Norris is actually legit and he takes on that. Yes, I do. First of all, I read his autobiography back in the 90s. At least his autobiography from back then has been like 30 years since I guess could be added to the his book. But yeah, he started taking Korean martial arts when he was stationed in Korea back during the Korean War in the 50s. And he started learning uh, not Taekwondo. He learned the other one, not Hapkido. Maybe you guys can remember that. Let me look on my. Uh, Let me use my other phone. But yeah, so he started off learning that, and when he came back to the U.S., he started doing point karate and full contact karate. So he was legit. He was already a champion by the time that he became friends with Bruce Lee. Um, he became he became one of Bruce Lee's students, and it's funny because a lot of these people will say, "Oh, I trained with Bruce Lee," but when you look at Bruce Lee's personal journals, these were his students, and it says a lot about Bruce himself, who never really competed. That he was teaching three of the top karate champions of the time. He was teaching Joe Louis, not the black boxer Joe Louis, the white Joe Louis, who's the founder of American kickboxing. He taught so Joe Louis took his the concepts that Bruce Lee taught him and developed American kickboxing based off of his karate and boxing background and the Jeet that Bruce Lee taught him at the time. That became the foundation of American kickboxing. The other world champion was Mike Stone, who's still alive today. He's living in the Philippines, right next to Shifu Tim Becker, who lives over there in the Philippines, who I want to train with when I go back over there. They live in the same province. And then the third person was Chuck Norris, who was also a karate champion at the time. Those were all his students. So think that like you can be a karate champion, and you have this little Asian guy come up to you and be like, nah, guys, let me show you how to do this a little bit better. That's what's that's that shows Bruce's ingenuity. But yeah, to make a long story short, Chuck Norris was definitely legit. He founded his own martial art based off of the stuff that he did and the stuff that he learned after coming back to America, training with other people. I think it's called Chuck Kawan, something like that. I don't remember the name of it, but yeah, Chuck is definitely legit. He's definitely one of my martial arts heroes. Okay, let me get back up here. Jotaro Kantaro says Aikido's legit as Wing Chun. Yes and no. So Wing Chun is marketed is Wing Chun is not it's not considered an internal martial art. It's it's considered an external martial art, or something that deals with actually like fighting and physical fitness, where the internal martial arts are more about spirituality, developing one's chi and all that sort of stuff. And I'm gonna tackle chi as well. That's bullshit. But um yeah, but the problem with Wing Chun is just that it's not very effective unless you use it with another martial art. And I don't care. There's people out there in the Wing Chun world, because coming since my background is Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do, one of our parent martial arts is Wing Chun, and um it's not that effective, guys. Which is one of the reasons that Bruce Lee largely abandoned a lot of the techniques from it. He kept the principles of Wing Chun within Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do, but a lot of the techniques themselves he abandoned because he realized that they wouldn't work when a larger opponent. So, um, but yeah, Chuck Norris' system is called Chun Kukdo, and he originally took Tang Sodo. Tang Sodo is often called Korean karate because both Tang Sodo, Taekwondo, and Hapkido's comes from a all those Korean masters started off in Shotokan karate, brought that over to back to Korea, and then mixed it with the local Korean martial art, which was Takian, which is a very like stylized kicking style. And I think Taekwondo is the closest to that to the traditional Takian martial art. Um, and Hapkido is sort of like a mix of that and jujitsu, or well, I should say judo rather. And Tang Sodo was the most preserved, like the most elements of like the original Shotokan karate. Ari says, I actually train in a different type of gym, really small place here in Rio. We train old school type, starting, standing, closing, gap, exchanging blows, takedowns, then ground game. That's what's up. Another thing is that, you know, another thing I don't like about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it gets all the glory when there was another rival martial art in Brazil that was just as effective as Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. The difference was that Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was taught more to the elite, people who had money, whereas the other martial art um, was taught to more of the common man. So, and that's it doesn't get enough um, it doesn't get enough credit. I'm trying to look up the name because I always forget the name. I always confuse it with the competition called Valley Tudo, which is where both of those arts largely made their their start in Brazil was in those Vale Tudo competitions back in the day. But if maybe someone remembers the name of it, let me see. I gotta look. Sorry, I gotta look this stuff up. Luta Livre. That's what it was called. It was sort of like catch wrestling, from what I believe, but it was a Brazilian version of it, just like Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was like a version of Judo. Luta Livre was like a sort of catch wrestling. Arctic YT says, hello, I'm back. How's everybody doing? What's up, Arctic? Um, well, looks like someone got deleted by Mrs. Contrarian. I told you she ain't playing, guys. I'm the nice one. She's not. She's not gonna play. She will time you out if if you're out of bounds. Jotaro says you're pretty cool. Like the sub, I'm gonna be here next time. I appreciate it. Thank you. And again, I do have a bunch of videos talking about martial arts myths. I want to get into a lot of those because a lot of those people believe, and some of those I used to believe myself until I actually did a little digging, and it was like, yeah, this stuff isn't true. Eric LaPointe says true. What's up, Eric? Big Ed Mustache says Chuck Liddell is what? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know much about Chuck Liddell. I would just say I know he's a very good MMA. He was a very good MMA competitor in his time. Jesus says I look like the guy from the dude from the Avengers. You're probably gonna say Don Cheadle, right? I get that literally every live stream, and again, I don't mind. But personally, I think I look better. Mrs. Contrarian, what you think? Do I look better than Tony Stark's best friend? What's his name? Um, but yeah, I think I look better than Don Cheadle. So vote Biden 2024, y'all. Okay. The Iceman, what? The Iceman. Yeah, it was Edward Lawler was the one who was timed out. Too bad for you, Edward. Have you ever thought about starting an OnlyFans? No. And if I did, it wouldn't be anything sexual on it. It would probably be just all martial arts or something like that. Believe it or not, and I have never subscribed to OnlyFans because I'm not wasting money, but there are stuff on OnlyFans that has nothing that is not sexual at all. There's actually a Japanese version of OnlyFans called I forgot what it starts with, but it's there's a similar platform in Japan that also has people who do both sexual and non-sexual stuff. But OnlyFans is known mostly for the sexual stuff because it was literally started to to be used originally by celebrities and like porn stars and stuff like that. But then it got hijacked by a bunch of people who wanted to act like porn stars and started producing porn for OnlyFans. And at one point, OnlyFans had almost stopped it because when they started looking for corporate sponsors, some of these corporate sponsors were hesitant to jump on um, to being um, pick being sponsors to a platform that deals in such illicit content. So they had almost stopped it, just as Kevin Samuels predicted, but I guess they saw the money train and decided to keep letting people do sexual content. However, I can't say that's going to be a long term thing for them because they're looking at the bottom line, and their bottom line isn't about letting a bunch of talentless women shake their ass and get the pickle for other people to see when there's better content out there that could be made using like actual celebrities. So those women who want to get pickled down will have to look for a job at Subway. They'll always be hiring. Eat fresh. Anyway, Eric LaPointe says I train with Royce Gracie and I'm not the best fighter. Man, it it would be an honor. It would be. I talked a lot of shit about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and the Gracie family, but to be completely honest, it would be a complete honor to train with Royce Gracie. So for you to been able to train with him, I think that's awesome for real. Chica Otisi says, my understanding of chi is intent. No, so chi, so all right, so since let's get into the first martial arts myth. So chi, also known as ki in Korea and Japan, or in India, prana, it's basically supposed to be a life energy. It comes from the now debunked theory in biology called vitalism. Vitalism is basically a debunked theory that there's a life force that runs through all living things. Um, and you can think of sort of like the force in Star Wars, where in Star Wars there's a living force and there's a cosmic force. The living force is within all living things, and the cosmic force give gives rise to the living force. And anyway, these concepts George Lucas borrowed from Eastern philosophy, particularly from Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism. And so chi is sort of something like that, but it's largely BS. There's no we in biomedicine and modern medical science or physiology, whatever. There has never been discovered any long these meridians of uh, vital energy running throughout bodies, of which if there was a stoppage in them would cause illness or death. It's never been discovered. Nor can you use that energy to hurt others with. So to some of the old karate masters credit, karate nerd Jesse Enkamp, go check out his YouTube channel if you've never heard of him. He's really cool. He's a guy from I believe the Netherlands, but he's like the most learned person when it comes to karate. He actually has gone to Okinawa, which you'll say the birthplace of karate, and trained with the old school masters of Okinawan karate and other forms, and even other forms of Japanese karate. He's even traced down the roots of karate to places outside of Japan, because karate is a hybrid martial art that started in a bunch of different countries and was developed in Okinawa and then furthermore in mainland Japan. Um, a lot of those karate masters, when they talk about chi, they they don't believe in that mystical stuff either. They don't believe it's like an energy you can use to throw at people and hurt people, or that it is something that decides like how healthy you are and stuff. They basically saw chi as just mechanical energy that you expend when you train. That's how they more or less saw it. So it wasn't to a lot of them it wasn't as mystical as a lot of people use it today. And yeah, chi is largely bullshit. And like I said, the one of the prototype charlatans in the martial arts community was George Dillman, who was made somehow a black belt magazine uh um he I don't know, for some reason they decided to make him one of their favorite people. And he's a charlatan. He had marketed the whole no touch knockout that you can use by throwing chi at people, like you were Goku or some other little Super Saiyan throwing energy at people, or Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter. You can't throw chi at people. There's no proof that it exists. Um, Again, some of the original mentions of it by some of the people a long time ago when they were talking about chi, they meant it more in just the banal form of mechanical energy that you use when you train. That's the best that's that's the best I can say about chi. But other than that, it's mostly just bullshit. Ari Pierce says at Luda Livre. Yes, that was war in the streets of the city in those days. Yeah, because there was a big competition between Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Luta Livre. And as far as I can tell, I think they're about equally as good. Like I said, the only difference was that Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was marketed better because of the UFC. The UFC became the basically the stable horse for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. If not, I think they both would have been equal contenders today. But I don't think one is better than the other. I just think Luda Livre was more marketed to the common man, whereas Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was more marketed to the elite. If and you're from there, so maybe you can tell me if that's wrong or not. Eric says, "Oh, sorry, let me correct that. Trained under Royce for 3 classes and a school for 3.5 hours for 3.5 years. That's still good. Like you trained direct, you still trained under him. That's still pretty cool. Like think of any martial arts legend right now and say, well, I didn't train with him, but I did train under him. You will still get a lot of points for it, right? Say someone said, well, I didn't train with Bruce, but I did train, in his school for a few years. Man, that would be you would get so much accolades for that. And you say you did MMA as a hobby. Man, that's a hell of a hobby to undertake. Like, I was considering it a few years ago, but it wasn't like when I was telling my cousin and one of his friends, they misunderstood. I wasn't trying to make it a career. I was telling my cousin like I'm in my 40s. I'm not making MMA a career. I said I wouldn't mind maybe trying a few amateur fights, just just for the sake of trying, just for the sake of the experience and also giving myself more credibility as a coach. But yeah, I was not trying to make that a career, not in my 40s. My 20s, sure, maybe even my 30s, but not my 40s. Ari says, I'd love to see your take on what we do. How do I send you stuff? So my email is in my bio. So is my Facebook and my Instagram. You can send me information that way through my email, uh, Facebook or Instagram. CJ Johnson's back. What's up? He said, watch the interview with Chuck Liddell struggling to stay awake on live TV. You mean like Biden? No, I'm joking, but I'm kidding. And Trump was falling asleep. The Stormy Daniels, um, I'll be falling asleep too. Like the only time she's worth listening to is when she's naked, because any other time she's lying. But anyway, Jewel May says hi. What's up, Jewel? CJ Johnson says, do you think you could whoop fake boy Steven Skull? Yeah, I think you probably could too. I mean, first of all, what is he in his 70s now? He's fat as hell. I mean, have you seen his movies? Almost all the stuff, all the fight choreography is done by a stunt double. Like, ugh. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could beat him up. I'm sure you could beat him up. I'm pretty sure most of the people in this chat room could beat him up right now. Now, does he have legit skills? Yeah, absolutely. The only way he will win on the fight is just that he might be bigger than many of us. I think Steven Skull is like 6'4" or something close to that, and he has a lot of weight. But again, that weight will work against him at his age. Like he's either 70s in the 70s or pushing his 70s. So Carol's back. What's up? He said hi. I literally woke up just now, and the first live I saw was yours. Oh, I appreciate it, Carol. Forever BFF said, hey, what's up? Chica says, that's interesting. It's good to add to my understanding. Can you explain more about the mechanical energy expended? So just, basic physics, like you have potential energy or, gravitational potential energy and you have mechanical energy. Once potential energy, you know, is, you know, is actually used, it becomes kinetic energy, right? And the most common form of that kinetic energy is mechanical energy, which is basically the energy of things, you know, being moved about and stuff like that. That's all. It's nothing that sublime about it. It's just mechanical energy is like the common form of energy for moving things about. Regular points at Steven Seagal. Dilfit says, "How you doing, man? What's up, Dilfit?" So let's get into some more myths. So I already just talked about chi, which I said is largely bullshit. Is based on the debunked theory within folk science or folk biology that is called vitalism. Vitalism was debunked by modern biology. Um, and there's many forms of vitalism, whether you're talking about chi or prana or a bunch of other um, cultures who believe in some sort of universal life force, like Star Wars. I believe more in the Star Wars version than any of these other vitalism theories. Troll Boogie says he has to wear two jockstraps to hide his huge. Okay, no Diddy. Eric the Guapo says hello. What's up, Eric? Get back. So what's an all right? So what's another one? All right, here's one that's gonna probably shock a lot of you guys. Let's talk about, and this is probably one of my first martial arts myths that I did. Like I said, when you go off the live stream, please check out my whole listing of martial arts myths. Some of them you'll probably find funny, or you might disagree with them or agree with them. Whichever, I don't matter. You can leave comments, But one of the ones that I found interesting was ninjutsu. Ninjutsu is not a real martial art. It has never been one, and there was no historical ninjas. People will disagree, and they will point to all this historical stuff. All the historical stuff written about ninjas was written after they existed. That's the first problem. Two was that, yeah, there were spies and assassins in feudal Japan. Every 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 warlike civilization had spies and assassins. That doesn't make them ninjas. Um, what people call ninjas were just the samurai or their foot soldiers, which are called the ashigaru. They would do those things. Like, people think that there was some code of honor among samurai that they wouldn't do certain things like spy or assassinate people. Yes, they would. They would do whatever they were asked of by their lord. So the spying and you know assassinations happen. Yeah, but they were just done by samurai and ashigaru. Now, some people might say, "Oh, well, those were a subset of folks, and they could be called ninja." No, they weren't. There was no separate elite clan of people who were in service that did those things and nothing else. On top of that, most of these warlords at the time wouldn't have trusted people that weren't under their lordship, like some independent group. They wouldn't have trusted that. The only time they might hire people that's not within their service is like they might hire like bandits or something to do something so that they could kind of like pretend they had nothing to do with it. Sort of like the mafia today. Like, they might hire like some black kids to you know take you out so that they can keep their hands clean of it. But other than that, no, there were no historical ninja. The so-called ninja sword, the ninjato, was completely made up. The first time we saw that sort of ninjato or ninja sword was actually made for like movies because they were cheaper to make than to make actual katanas. And there were straight swords in early Japan history before the Edo period, like in earlier periods of Japan. But when the katana came out with the curved blade, they found that it was a superior weapon, so it replaced the straight sword, which is why the ninjato would not have been used over katana. So, and like then famous uh there's the famous war with the Iga and Koga clan against the shogunate, and the shogunate won. First of all, those Iga and Koga clans, they weren't ninja clans. Those were samurais. They were actually rural samurai, which are called jizamurai. They were considered less prestigious than the imperial and shogunate samurai. So they were basically treated poorly by the more elite imperial warriors, and that's why they had banded together with peasants to fight off the shogunate, and they lost. But they weren't ninjas. Anyway, Let me get back to the comments. Um, Harry said, I find your takes interesting. I just happened to parachute here. Look, what's your background? If you mean martial arts background, so started off in judo when I was like 7, 8 years old because I was basically forced to by parents. Then later took up taekwondo as a teenager. Then as an adult, I started doing Janfan, Jeet Kune Do, wrestling, Muay Thai, boxing, Savate, Filipino martial arts. And after college, I did some traveling and developed those um, those things further by actually traveling to some of those countries and learning them there. Did a little Thai boxing in Thailand, a little bit of modern arnis in the Philippines. Did some Salat in Indonesia. Um, practiced some boxing with the people at HBO Boxing. So um, that's pretty much it. Therefore, said worst thing is buying crystals thinking they are able to cure ailments. Since some crystals can cost hundreds of dollars, scamming unfortunate people. Yeah, or like Reiki. If you heard of that Japanese spiritual treatment called Reiki, that's bullshit. You might hear martial artists talk about Reiki, Reiki. Eric Lapointe says, I like to think of the old arts like Chi and others as lost technology involving fractals and frequencies. No, so like the ones that talk the most about those are the internal martial arts, like I was mentioning before, like Tai Chi, Chi Kung, some other. There's like a bunch of internal martial arts in China, usually practiced by old people, like Tien, Shan Pai, Kung Fu, and then in like Japan, there's stuff like Aikido. They're not. They're good for like people with less mobility and a lower level of fitness to to stay healthy, and it might help them become more spiritually attuned. But they're not useful for fighting or self defense. They literally not. Like you can take certain techniques, like in Jikundo, we've taken techniques from like Tai Chi and stuff like that, and use them in a realistic application. But the whole art itself is not going to be useful for fighting. You can take techniques from like Aikido or Tai Chi and actually apply them in a while sparring and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean the whole art itself will be useful. Chica says, yeah, I need to get familiar with physics terminology. What are your thoughts on more oxygen intake, which leads to more and consistent output mentally and physically? Yeah, so potentially. So back like 10, 11 years ago, there was the trend where people were wearing the, the oxygen mask, which would lower your oxygen intake because it was supposed to like, um, give you a more, um, like a stronger wind capacity when it really didn't. What it really all it did was kind of just like strengthen your breathing muscles to actually like increase your VO2 max. Those masks aren't going to work because you're only wearing them for like maybe an hour or two at best. But to get the most out of actually developing your VO2 max, you have to actually practice at a high altitude and just live there. That's why you see Olympic athletes, they train in like the high altitude training centers of like places like Colorado and places like that, because their high altitude forces them to develop um, a higher VO2 max and stuff like that, which you can't do simply by wearing those little oxygen deprivation masks that people used to wear that was so trendy like ten years ago. You even saw the guy wearing it on the first Creed movie. He was wearing one of those while he was running. It Like I said, the best they can do is they can strengthen your breathing muscles, but they're not going to give you a better oxygen intake. I think you're better if you want to increase your stamina. You need to just practice more stamina exercises like running. So Tamara says turn Muslim right now. How do you turn Muslim? I was a Muslim as a child, so whatever. and keep playing. You will get timed out. This is about martial arts. And even though I'm not Muslim, shouldn't be making fun of Muslims. This is not the platform for that. Nor is this nor is this is that the subject for today. Dilford, he was trying to he's been a jackass. So a common saying amongst Muslim brothers when they greet each other, they say "Wa alaikum salam." Well, they say "Assalamu alaikum," which means peace unto you. And then someone will say "Wa alaikum salam," and unto you peace as well, brother. That's what those common sayings mean. But he's just being a jackass, and he's about to get timed out. Isaiah says principles, not techniques. Yeah. So again, so going back to John Fanchi Kondo, like it's often said that there's 26 elements that have influenced Jeet Kune Do. Now the current orthodoxy coming from the Bruce Lee estate, I won't say exactly whom because I hold them in high regard, but here they're just completely wrong. They said that there's not 26 elements that influence Jeet Kune Do. Really, that is actually just three: Western fencing, boxing, and Wing Chun Kung Fu, which is just totally false because in none of those three things will you find the kicking that's done in Jeet Kune Do. You just won't find that. It's just completely false, and I understand why they would promote that, but it's simply false. The 26 of most of those 26 elements, most of them come from Chinese martial arts, and again, a lot of those influences like have like it would be like a research paper. Like sometimes you cite things in your paper, but you may not have actually used them in the actual body of the research article itself. But because they were things that you used during your research to 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 write that paper, you still cite them as sources. Same thing with Jeet Kune Do. So when Bruce Lee was looking into a lot of different martial arts, there was a lot of influences that he looked into, which didn't, which may have not actually have made it into the Jeet Kune Do techniques itself, but were still considered an influence. So we still cite them as one of the 26 elements of Jeet Kune Do. Um, like I said, even Wing Chun itself, which was largely the bread and butter of early John Fan Jeet Kune Do, you don't see much of it anymore. But the principles are still there, like the belief in the center line defense, and stuff like that. All those sort of principles are still there, but many of the techniques aren't there anymore because a lot of the trapping skills are just not useful when fighting. Like one of the things that separated John Fan Kung Fu, which was Bruce Lee's earlier style, to it evolving into Jeet Kune Do was when Bruce started hard sparring. Once he started doing hard sparring, he realized what worked and what didn't work. So a lot of those things that may have influenced his, his research into martial arts and became, elements in his system were no longer there. So, but the principles still remain, but a lot of the techniques not. Space Monkey says grizzly bears are nah. I'm gonna say nah. I'm not a bear fan. They're like apex predators. Like, mm-mm. I would lose my ish if I saw a grizzly bear. Like last year, we had a black bear roaming around our neighborhood, and this is Baltimore, so you wouldn't think there's bears in Baltimore, but there was a bear in our neighborhood, like literally in my backyard. I didn't see it, but my neighbors did and took a picture of it. It even made it on the news, and it wandered from our area in the Baltimore suburbs all the way out to Prince George's County. I think even so far out as into DC, but not a bear fan. Harry Pierce says I'm subscribing. Thank you so much. So we'll send you out some stuff to hear your thoughts on it. The Luta Livre versus BJJ period is cool too. And there's a ton of content in Portuguese from both sides. They're friends these days. I would hope so, because that whole contention was something like the rivalry between them started before those styles were even known here in America. So I would have think by now they've probably worked it out. Plus, both of them, like I said, are equally useful to me. For someone who would want a background in those sorts of things. And before BJJ even became a thing, when I first started doing John Fanchi Kondo, I was learning from a particular school of John Fanchi Kondo under Sifu Larry Hartzell. He was big in the grappling aspects of Jeet Kune Do, and in that he did catch wrestling, which would be similar to luta livre, as well as judo and traditional jiu-jitsu and Greco-Roman wrestling. Unfortunately, I lost most of those skills because I practice on my own, so I really don't have any way to practice my grappling skills unless I got one of those grappling dummies. But I don't really do that. I'll just shadow box and then I'll practice sprawling, and I think that's good enough. Tamworth, control yourself, buddy. Let's keep it let's keep it about martial arts here, or at least something lighthearted can translate for you. Okay. So I'll look for from the content from you. Like I said, all that stuff is in my bio. It's my email, my Facebook, and my Instagram handle. All of those are there. Eli Potoy says, "What martial arts the most powerful?" You're gonna have to you're gonna have to specify to me what you mean most powerful. When you say most powerful, are you talking about most useful, or are you talking about most aggressive? Um, I can answer that if you're a little bit more specific about what you mean by powerful. Because, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably my answer is probably going to be like it depends. Because literally just a few days ago, I did a whole live stream about what is the best martial art and why, and I largely said that it depends on the situation in which you're using it. What's the most powerful martial art that I have done? I would say Muay Thai. Michael Myers says I'm here. Uh oh. Uh-oh. What's up, Michael Myers? Eric says, what do you think about bare knuckle boxing? I don't know where to get started, but I would like to do it once or twice. I'm 40. I'm in my 40s too, Eric. So, Lethway is where you can. I don't know where you live, but Google Lethway. Lethway is spelled Leith. I'm sorry. I'm misspelling it. I think it's Lethei. Was no Lethwei, something like that. It's the Burmese um martial art equivalent of Muay Thai. They're very similar. The but some of the rule system in Lethwei is different than Muay Thai. In Lethwei, you're allowed to headbutt, and a lot of their fighting is done bare knuckle. And there's also a noun. There's a bare knuckle fighting championship as well. I think it's just called BFC, but there's a bare knuckle fighting championship, and like I said, Lethwei, which is Burmese boxing, uh, is specialized in bare knuckle fighting. So look up Lethwei or look up Burmese boxing, and you'll find that. And by the way, don't it's not Bondo, because you might look it up and it's going to refer you to Bondo. Bondo is the traditional art. So just like with Muay Thai, there's a traditional martial art in Thailand called Muay Baran, which is more the traditional stuff that developed into Muay Thai. Um, in Myanmar or Burma, there's Bando, which was like the traditional martial art, and then there's Lethwei, which is the actual boxing sport. So, and similar to that in Cambodia, Cambodia's martial art style used to just be called Muay Thai as well, but they wanted their own national sport, so they changed the name to Kun Kimmer to emphasize that it's Kimmer boxing and not Thai boxing, which pissed off the Muay Thai Association in Thailand, because before I think they were one unified association in both Cambodia and Thailand. They have a traditional art called Bokator um, in Cambodia, but the Cambodian boxing is called Kun Kimmer, or also sometimes called Prato Saray. Um, Sorry. Jennifer says, "What are your thoughts on barefoot shoes? What are zero drop shoes? I'm sorry. Even if they are a fad, being able to have your toes go back to their natural toe spread would be beneficial for everyone, right?" So in Jeet Kune Do, we actually practice with our shoes on, and one of the reasons is because a large background martial art, parent martial art of Jumfan Jeet Kune Do is Savate, French kickboxing, which uses which was traditionally done in boots. Um, Savat started on the streets of Paris and Marseille, and this is why I said that the the person in the Bruce Lee estate saying that Jeet Kune Do is just fencing, boxing, and Wing Chun Kung Fu is lying, because what in what other art are there these is the stylized kicks that you find in JKD? You're not going to get that from fencing, because fencing is with a sword, like a foil or saber or whatever. Um, Boxing is merely the hands as well. And Wing Chun has a few kicks, but none of them are particularly stylized, and they're basically all just for closing the distance so that you could use your hands. Savat is uses a heavy emphasis on kicking from low, middle to high, including aerial kicks. And in fact, modern karate also was influenced by Savat, because the son of Gichin Funakashi, who was the founder of Shotokan Karate, he was one of the Okinawa masters that brought it to mainland Japan during the imperial era. Um, his son um, took up Savat and mixed it with modern day karate, because Okinawan karate does not have high kicks or spin kicks in it. There's Well, there might be a spinning back kick, but there's no high kicks or jump kicks or any sort of fancy kicks in Okinawan karate. You see that in the Karate Kid when you see the difference between him practicing Okinawan karate and Cobra Kai practicing Tang Soda. And I'm talking about the Cobra Kai TV show, because they do a horrible job of showing it. I'm talking about the original movies back in the 80s. The they show the actual difference in their styles between Okinawan excuse me, between Okinawan karate and Tang Soda. The difference is that modern day karate blended Savat into its system. They wanted modern karate to be the Japanese answer to Western boxing. And we see that Savat influence in Jeet Kune Do, but unlike karate, I think more elements of Savat are in Jeet Kune Do than in modern karate, because we practice with our shoes on, because there's the roundhouse that they do is usually done with the toes, because you're kicking with shoes on, and their roundhouse is called the La Fouette, if I'm saying it correct. And you kick typically with your toe. You can also use the balls of your feet or your toes, but typically, since you're doing it with your shoes on, you're kicking with the toes. Um, but I'm not sure exactly what the barefoot shoes or zero drop shoes are. But um, if when I practice, since I practice outside, of course I wear my shoes. But if I'm inside, I'll practice barefoot. I don't have a problem with it. But I know to do like my more savat type kicking, I can't use my toes. I'll use the balls of my feet. If that answers your question, I'm sorry if it doesn't. Ari says yes, they both are from the same roots. Actually, Fada brothers were teaching jiu-jitsu back in the day in the poorer areas of the city, and those are deep within the roots of lucha livre. Okay, so I haven't heard of the Fada brothers, so they're the sort of like the architects of lucha livre. Team Diddy or Team R. Kelly? um, if so, if we're talking now, if we're talking about their body of music, then I'm gonna go with Diddy just because Biggie is my favorite rapper, and I don't care whatever happens to Diddy happens to him, but I'm not gonna stop listening to Biggie for nobody. I don't care what Diddy done. Did he do it? I don't care what Diddy did. I'm gonna keep listening to Biggie regardless. So I don't care. And as far as R. Kelly, I'm gonna keep listening to him too. Here's the thing: if people are listening to top 40 music from 20 years ago, more than likely they're listening to something that was produced by R. Kelly. He produced so much music with so many different artists, and I'm not just talking about R&B and hip hop artists. He produced stuff for people doing rock and roll and stuff like that. So more than likely, if you listen to top 40 songs from the 2000s, you're listening to an R. Kelly song. It's impossible to just like stop listening to all his music altogether because he was such a mega producer. And I wouldn't try to anyway. Like people didn't stop listening to Elvis Presley. People haven't stopped listening to the Rolling Stones. And I can name a bunch of other, rock and roll people that done some shady stuff. Um, I'm not gonna stop listening to people for their bad behavior because I didn't listen to them in the first place because they were like my role models. So that's my answer to that. I'm listening to both, and if I had to choose, it's gonna be Diddy because all of Biggie's music came under Puffy. Trey Caesar says Karate Kid. That's still one of my favorite movies. And if you guys don't believe that's one of my favorite movies, I literally have the DVD. Where is it? I'm not gonna pick it up, but I have the Karate Kid Special Edition. Right. Actually, yeah, I am. I like proving my point. So, Karate Kid Special Edition. I'm not talking about the fake one with Will Smith's little stupid brat. I'm talking that's the real Karate Kid. It didn't even make sense for them to name that the Karate Kid when they were literally in China doing kung fu. And they thought that they would be clever and just have him say within a movie, "No, mom, this is kung fu." Like that's not going to save you. Like no. But yeah, Karate Kid all the way. Sean said, "Brother, them white boys whipped you. Don't even know what that means. Don't care." Eric says, "Thanks, I will. I live by Mohegan Sun on the outskirts. Fought there before as an amateur. I wrote that down. Thanks. No, no problem. It would be 2 years before I step in that ring." Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, you've already done MMA. Um, MMA would be, believe it or not, MMA would be way tougher. Like, there's Thai boxers that say, "Man, I'm not doing MMA because MMA is a tougher sport." I like Muay Thai better, but MMA is a tougher sport than Muay Thai or kickboxing. And to be honest, Lethway is more brutal than Muay Thai, but Muay Thai boxers have more or I think are more talented fighters than Lethway. I think Lethway is a little sloppy, but like I said, the biggest differences is is that they practice bare knuckle fighting and that they allow headbutts in Lethway. So it's more brutal, but think it would I don't think it would be harder than you doing MMA, honestly. Ari says, "Gotta go to sleep. Glad I found the channel. Appreciate the content. I appreciate you chiming in, Ari. I'll be looking out for the information you send me. If you have any other questions, just you can leave a content. I'm sorry, you can leave a comment once this video posts. All right. So since there's a little gap between the comments, guys, I'm gonna go into another martial arts myth. I didn't see, unless I missed it, no one really disagreed with me about ninjutsu being a myth, which I was actually surprised because there's a lot of people that that challenge me on the fact that when I say ninjutsu wasn't real. Um, another related myth is like the belief in the Anabugeisha or the female samurai. And I tell them, guys, there were no female samurai. Like, you're talking about one of the most gender defined societies in the world, and in the feudal era, not even today. Even today, Japan is sharply delineated between the genders. Think about this back in the 1400s. You really think they want to have female samurai? Now, where the Honorable Geisha comes from, like there was one historical example that there was a female samurai, and even and the evidence on that is still so. But outside of that one historical example, most of the Honorable Geisha were like the wives or family members of male samurai. They were trained in martial arts, and particularly they were trained with the naginata, which is like a polearm spear. They were trained to use that, and it was used. They were basically trained in martial arts to defend the home while the husband or other prominent family member was in the field or serving their master. But but these honorable geisha or onamusha, whichever they call them, were not out in the field fighting along the men unless it was just like someone attacking their entire village, which would have happened like when the Iga and Koga clans were wiped out by the shogunate. So that's another myth that the honorable geisha or onamusha were female samurai that fought along the male samurai. That's a myth. Uh, Another myth is the code of Bushido. There was no code of Bushido. The samurai did have certain ethics that they went by, but there was no code of Bushido. The code of Bushido was literally made up by a Japanese man who was raised and educated in Europe and took the basically took the lessons of medieval chivalry and made a Japanese version of it, and then Imperial Japan spread that through their propaganda and said that this was the martial arts code for the Japanese warriors. Big Geisha is my mother. Big Geisha is my name. I don't know what you're saying, Darren. I'm talking about Onabu Geisha. That is a Japanese term, which roughly I guess would roughly translate to female warrior. But as I was saying, there were no female samurai. There were women trained in fighting arts at the time, but that was largely because they were expected to protect the home front when the samurai, the men, were off to war or on assignment. Troy Convery says, "What is your favorite sport?" Well, martial arts, of course. Martial arts is my favorite sport. Um, I guess. Well, I don't know if you mean like more specifically within the martial arts, I would say Muay Thai is my favorite, or kickboxing, which is related to Muay Thai, of course. Um, what else? If you mean like like professional ball sports or something like football or basketball or something like that, I would say baseball. My grandfather was actually in the minor leagues, so that definitely was an influence on me. Well, I didn't even know he was in a minor league. He was a minor league baseball player until he died, and I did his eulogy and read that, and I was like, why didn't my father ever tell me this? But it made sense because my grandfather loved baseball. He always watched the Baltimore Orioles games. He told me that if I ever wanted to become an athlete, that baseball is easier than becoming a baseball player would be easier than trying to be an NBA or NFL player. But I was never interested in baseball like that. But as far as you talking about professional ball sports, then baseball is my favorite. Overall, is of course martial arts, specifically Muay Thai and kickboxing. Um, Eric says you have some knowledge, man. I wish I had half of this. I'm I appreciate it. I'm really not that smart. I just read a lot. That's all. I read a lot. Like when I was a kid, every time there was a new black belt magazine, I was reading black belt magazine. I would go to the library and check out every martial arts book I could find, from everything from Aikido to Kung Fu to Jeet Kune Do to anything. Especially those ninja books, like in the 80s and early 90s. Everyone was like, you had all these little fake ninja experts, like Miyazaki. What's his name? Miyazaki, whatever's the guy's name, and his student Stephen K. Hayes. They had a whole bunch of books on ninjutsu at the time. Um, there was this white guy who pretended to be Japanese and used the pen name Ashita Kim. I read one of his books, which was weird. Um, he was another one of those charlatans. But yeah, I just read a lot of stuff, and then I trained with a lot of other people who know martial arts that I didn't know, and learned. That's how I end up learning a lot, because I didn't always have the ability to train formally in school, so I would exchange, information with other martial artists and learn that way. But I appreciate it. Troy Convery says, "What about soccer?" Well, I'm the U.S., so honestly, not a lot of folks in. So, now there's some hardcore soccer fans in America, but I'm not one of them. So I don't have anything against it. Of course, it was fun playing it, like in gym, like in middle school and high school, but it wasn't anything that I wanted to compete in or that I would really watch on TV. But I have nothing against soccer. Can I do a backflip? No, I can do a front handspring, and I haven't done that in years, so I'm not gonna. I definitely wouldn't be trying it anytime soon. If I get the opportunity, maybe I might find a place to teach us tumbling for adults, because I think I am still athletic enough that I could try to do tumbling, but I don't do any flips. The most you'll see me do is a cartwheel, and I do that as a cartwheel kick, the way Sanchai teaches it, when you do an arm bar and trap the person's leg or arm, and then you do a cartwheel and kick them. I've been practicing martial arts since I was 7 years old, so um, it's been it's been coming close to 40 years now, close to it. PG may say I like balls too. I don't know if you're a guy or a girl, but yeah, no Diddy over here. Eric LaPointe says, "I lose it if I don't use it fast. I'm a practice guy. I have to practice." Exactly. Like I feel, I don't know about you, but like I feel bad if I don't practice that day. Like at least, like if I don't do anything else for the day, I will at least do my 10K run, just to say, hey, I did something to stay in shape today. But I feel awful if I don't like at least do a few minutes of shadow boxing or something, because I just want to keep those skills, like in my head, because shadow boxing is sort of like homework. Bigatti Mustache says, "No bull. My teacher is Gazelle Jiu Jitsu coach." I don't know who Giselle is, but if that's someone who's famous in the BJJ community, that's cool. You Girl Bell said, "Could you shout out my name?" I just did. You Girl Bell. Is that a Taylor Swift? Is that a Taylor Swift profile? Mrs. Contrarian is a moderator. She's a huge Taylor Swift fan. Are you the black guy for Breaking Bad? You talking about what's the guy named Escarla? I can't. I'm sorry, I can't say his name, but yeah, definitely not. I wish that guy has been in Hollywood since the '80s. The first time I saw him was in School Days, which was a Spike Lee movie, when he played the big brother of the fraternity. He's been doing movies since then, and I think School Days came out in like I'm gonna say like maybe 85 or 86, or he's been doing movies since then, and now he's like the best villain in every. He's like the best villain in like every TV show right now, from The Mandalorian to Breaking Bad. So I think that's the black guy you're talking about, and I think he's also like Afro Latino. So I'm not here. Glenn Taylor says Gustav Frey, he's the man. I don't know who he is, but I'm guessing that's a martial artist. All right, let's get to some other martial arts myths and Bushido. Okay, so I mentioned George Dillman, mentioned Stephen K. Hayes, which was this fake ninjutsu master in the 80s and 90s. He's still around today, but he doesn't promote himself as much anymore. He was another one of those Black Belt Magazine Hall of Fame members, and I think Black Belt Magazine was as good as it was bad for the martial arts community because they put out so much bad information. Like George Dillman was one of their Black Belt um, members of their Hall of Fame. Like, how do you go from Black Belt Hall of Fame being people like Bruce Lee to charlatans like George Dillman and Stephen K. Hayes? So, um, so what's another martial arts myth? Here's one. Now I've talked about this a million times because I think it should be over communicated. In a in a situation where someone is trying to hurt you or attack you, people always say just run. That's not a good. Most of the time, that's not a good. That's not a good strategy to just run away. First of all, do you practice running sprints every day that you can just break away from someone in the heat of a situation? Because if not, if you're the typical out of shape American, you're not going to just run away from some altercation. You're literally too out of shape to do so, and more than likely, the person attacking you is probably in better shape than you, which is why they thought that you would be an easy target in the first place, because they think that they are either more athletic than you, they have a weapon. All of these factors mean that you're probably not going to be able to run away. I always say that as a horrible advice to teach someone in self defense is just run away. No, there are a bunch of different strategies you can use when facing an altercation. It's not just fight or flight, which is what people think. You either fight or run. There's other things like, depending on the situation, you could just submit. Just say, "Hey, you got it, man. I'm sorry." Just let them call you names, insults. Yep, I'm a punk. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. You got it. You got it, big dog. You could simply do that. Diffuse the situation that way. If the person wants your wallet or whatever, just give it to them. Just, hey, I don't want any trouble, sir. Here, take it. Just let me go. Here, take it. That's another strategy. Another thing is you could yell for help, depending on where you're at, because that may not always be useful. But depending on where you're at, if you're in a place where you think that you would get a helpful response, you could yell for help. Um, let's see what else. Um, you could bluff. I think bluffing is a bad strategy too, but sometimes you can bluff and be like, man, I'll do such and such and blah 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 if you do this, if you try to mess with me. I don't think bluffing is a good strategy, but that's another possible strategy. But running is not a good strategy most of the time. So like I said, the average person is not athletic enough to sprint away out of a dangerous situation. And two, even if you are, you may be in a confined space where you can't run. So just saying run away is not a realistic strategy. So that's another one of those martial arts myths I defeated, or at least highlighted as being problematic. All right, let me get back to the comments. Chica says, have you seen the Asian girl that trains pretty hardcore, kicking concrete and punching it and coming sledging? Yes, I have, and it's complete bullshit. I think she's in like Indonesia or Malaysia somewhere doing pencaks a lot. That's a style that I know. She is a charlatan. That her videos have been debunked. There's a lot of editing that goes into those videos that makes her look like she's doing stuff that she's not really capable of doing. It's bullshit. Thanks for bringing that up. Eric, the point is, you're absolutely right. He said running is prey. They already won like a cat. Exactly. If if a person decided to prey on you, they've already decided that you're weaker than them, or they think that you are. So running away is not the greatest strategy. Like I literally run every day as a workout, and I'm still not about to run away. Like unless I'm in the open, like unless you're in like a open space, and you are pretty confident that this person won't pursue you over a long distance, then go for it. Otherwise, if you're typically in most self-defense situations where you're in a confined space, running may not be good. Running may be the worst strategy because you might actually, like I said, if you're the average American who's not even physically fit, you're gonna actually make it worse for yourself. You're gonna tire yourself out, making it easier for that person to attack you when they catch up to you. It's not a good strategy. Like Eric is talking about, it's just not. Like there's a time and place for everything, but running is usually not a good strategy. Your best bet is either to fight, submit, bluff, try to reason with the person, you know, call for assistance, all these things if you have to fight. But running is probably not a good situation. It's not realistic in a confined space. If you're that concerned about, you know, getting into a situation where you won't be able to defend yourself, look into getting a CCW, get your concealed carry weapon permit, and carry when you go to certain places. The problem with that is you can't take a concealed carry with you everywhere. There's many places where you can't take your concealed carry weapon. So I will also tell people to have EDC weapons like a tactical flashlight or tactical pen, which can be taken virtually anywhere in government buildings, even at airports. So, but running is not a good strategy. It's you at at best you might make it to a place where you can find help. At worst, you just basically tired yourself out to make yourself an easier target. SBDXX says, "Hi sir, what's up? Can you help me with $50?" I sure cannot. Um, Look somewhere else. I do not give money. um, and so on to the next martial arts myth. Oh, let's before we get into the other martial arts myths, let's talk about McDojos. I didn't get into that. So there's a whole channel by a guy who does called his channel's called McDojo Life. Check his channel out; it's really good. His definition of a McDojo is a little bit different than mine. His and he goes into some dark stuff sometimes when it comes to McDojos, like instructors that abuse their students, like physically and in the sex way. I don't go that far when I discuss McDojos. My McDojo definition is more simple. For me, a McDojo is a place where you're not really learning anything useful, and it's catering to kids. That's what I see as a McDojo. Like for me, a McDojo is a place that's like it's just there to make money. Um, and it's basically because of the way that martial arts schools market themselves in America leads to McDojos that most of their most of the most reliable income they'll get from students in martial arts schools in America will be from children. So they cater to children, but it makes those martial arts styles less useful because they gotta kind of water it down and spread it out to keep these kids invested for like 10 years of training. Um, this is why karate and stuff like that are a joke because karate back in the 70s and 80s was very useful originally. And I've given the example when I was a kid, I wanted to take up karate, and my stepfather took me to this dojo, and this guy was like, hey, we would love to have him, but just to let we train pretty tough here. So, he might come home with bruises or black eyes, maybe a broken bone sometimes. He said, but it's all part of our training. and I think that turned my stepfather away. So he didn't let me join that school. But that's a lot of karate schools were like that back then. They were serious about fighting. Like it wasn't up until '90s and stuff like that that you start having these watered down schools. But McDojos are like that. Like I think to me, the defining essence of McDojos that they cater to children, to little children. And it's like if I go to a school and I see a 6 year old with a black belt, I'm leaving. Like there's no way you're gonna tell me that this kid trained hard enough to earn a black belt. Now, in some systems, like in some Taekwondo schools, they have child black belts and they have adult black belts. So the black belt that the child earns won't translate into an adult black belt. He has to earn that all over again as an adult. I, that's fine with me because it rewards the child for his time in learning, but at the same time it doesn't. But at the same time it doesn't devalue the 25-year-old man who earned a black belt, because to say that they would be equal, like the 8-year-old with a black belt and the 25-year-old man with a black belt, is just a joke. And if you go into any martial arts school and you see children walking around with black belts under the age of 13, leave. Eric Roca says most karate dojos are just daycare. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So my definition of a McDojo is that they're glorified daycare centers. Like I said, McDojo life has a darker definition of what McDojos are. He does include the schools that are like daycare centers, but he also talks about instructors who are charlatans and instructors who abuse their students, which yeah definitely are McDojos, but mine is more along the lines that they're glorified daycare centers and that you got little kids walking around with black belts. That doesn't that doesn't imbue me with any confidence that what you're going to teach me will help me on the streets of places like Baltimore and Philadelphia and LA or Detroit, learning something that a 6 year old can do. So, and yeah, like Eric says, like it gives the kids false confidence. They don't teach them resistance or building muscles like in MMA. Gone are the days of Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee. Yeah. So like again, that dojo I mentioned where the guy was saying I would get beat up, and then all the students get beat up there while training. I noticed the half of their gym was also a weight was a weight gym. Like when I walked in, like half of it was like the traditional karate school, and then the other half was all like weights and stuff. So I'm pretty sure that would have been a good place to train. Ashley says, "Sir, go get a wife." Ashley, my wife is literally the moderator, so you need to go get a life. Chica said, "Was it Kyo Cushion?" I don't know what the style was when I went there as a kid. Um, More than likely it was Shotokan, because Shotokan is the most widely practiced form of karate. So if I had to guess, it was probably Shotokan karate. I literally didn't hear about Kyokushin karate until like maybe 12 years ago. Eric Johnson says, "Excuse me, Mr. Wood Bullard from the Peterson School for the Blind ring a bell. You sound so familiar." No, I'm sorry. I haven't heard of it. I'm sorry. Eric says, "I remember being 12 and doing karate and he had to spar another kid. We had padding and he was bigger and I front kicked him hard enough that it launched him, damn, into the mirror. I hope they didn't make you guys pay for the broken mirror." Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Old school karate was effective. Like yeah, and there are still a few out there, but just like with Krav Maga, you will have to like sift through all the chaff to get to the wheat, because so much karate has been broiled, has been simmered down into McDojos, that it's hard to find the really good ones unless you go overseas. But a lot of the American karate systems aren't that great. He's almost got kicked out because his mom was rich. I remember making a little bitch cry. Oh, that's funny. We did sparring in Taekwondo, but again, the sparring we did in Taekwondo was the little foot fencing because it came under the WTF or World Taekwondo Federation. And so for those that know, there's like the WTF and then there's the ITF, which I think originated in North Korea and is more. I think it's a little bit more aggressive than WTF. And there's another Taekwondo association out there too, but I think ATA, American Taekwondo Association, those are the three that I know of. But old school karate and old school taekwondo used to be way more effective. The old school taekwondo used to be called power era taekwondo, and so people don't know a lot of the techniques you see in the power era taekwondo, you might find in Muay Thai. Like they did elbows, they did knees, they did leg kicks, and this is in taekwondo. But you wouldn't see that now in like Olympic style taekwondo, which is just foot fencing. So there's no America without an Eric. This chat has me laughing. Right. um. So yeah, my definition of a McDojo is basically glorified daycare centers where you have a bunch of kids walking around with black belts claiming they're experts. Um. One of the people I do life coaching for, she told me one of her schools there was a second degree black belt, and it was like a girl who was like 13 or 12 years old. I'm like, come on, second degree black belt at 12 or 13. That's just ridiculous. I'll accept a black belt at 12 or 13, but second degree black belt, like in tech, I can't speak for all the different styles, and I can't speak for all the different dojos in Taekwondo, but in in most in my understanding of most Taekwondo, the degrees come with age, so you can only reach a certain degree once you reach a certain age in Taekwondo. So I think so like for like second degree, I think you have to be like at least 21. So it was so I don't see how a 12, 13-year old girl should have a second degree black belt because that literally should only be someone who's like 21 or older achieving a second degree black belt. And with third degree, I think you have to be like 25 or so or whatever, and so on and so on. Like each degree or dan they call them, like first dan, second dan, third dan. It goes all the way up to 10th dan, which is like the head person. Um, and I think Donald Trump was given an honorary ninth dan in Taekwondo, um, just like Putin was given like a honorary ninth dan in Judo and an or ninth degree, um, and in another style too. So, because some of those times, those degrees at the higher level are just honorary. um, but yeah, so that's my take on McDojos. They glorify daycare centers, and or they teach bullshit martial arts. Like I said, Krav Maga is one of them. And like I said, Krav Maga isn't all bad, but most of the places that teach it are bad because they don't spar and they refuse to compete, and they teach gun disarms, which could get someone seriously hurt and sent to the afterlife. Chica says, I'm trying to get more inspiration for angles. What are your takes on finding angles and sticking? You're talking about like using like the triangulation like in Filipino martial arts? Because if so, you can just take your sticks out and use that to form a triangle, and you move adjacent to that to learn your triangle footwork. Because if you're talking about Philippine martial arts or other Southeast martial arts, you should be learning the triangle footwork, and you can simply learn that by putting sticks down on the ground and forming a triangle and using that to practice your footwork. Oh, striking. Okay. Or if you look, and I mean, you can use that with your striking as well. Like I said, the triangle footwork is something famous famously known in Philippine martial arts. So you could just put the sticks down if you have like Kali sticks like these. Let me show you. So if you have these, you can just put them on the ground and make them into a triangle and practice moving adjacent to that. So Eric says, I did a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a teen, and it's a serious sport. When you saw a black belt, you knew that dude could slam. I still have back injuries to that. Yeah. So and Icy Mike from the channel Hard to Hurt, he was discussing this with Sensei Seth, who also has a YouTube channel. You can check both of those guys out, Sensei Seth and Hard to Hurt with Icy Mike. And they were both discussing that nowadays you're seeing the same thing that happened to karate in the 80s is starting to happen to Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today, where it's becoming so widespread that it's becoming watered down because they want to teach it to people who don't really want to compete or fight. And once these little suburban once these suburban moms want to learn these arts, it starts being watered down significantly so that they and their little children can practice it. And so Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, up until like maybe 10 years ago, to if you were going to a gym that taught that, you were expected to compete, more or less. Nowadays you can practice them without having to compete, which is cool, that's fine. But it waters it down for the people who want to keep the effectiveness of the art. The art loses effectiveness when you no longer have to compete. And I'm not sure if the quality of the average BJJ black belt is the same as it was like 12 years ago. Like in a lot of places, it's still decent, but not everywhere. Because like I said, you got these people now that will just go into the half guard, and I think that's both unrealistic and ridiculous. It's not realistic for self defense, and in competition, like that's not good for MMA because if the person comes from a striking background, they are not going to acquiesce to you going into the half guard. They're just going to kick you. um, the other Eric. I'm a differentiate. So when I'm talking to Eric Roca, I'm gonna say Eric Roca, and when I'm talking to Eric Lapointe, I'm gonna say Eric Lapointe, so we don't confuse the two. So Eric Lapointe says, I knew a fourth degree black belt in karate. This man was amazing. He could backflip down the street in his 40s. Whoa. He taught me some cool magic tricks using seeds. And I'm not gonna lie, you look like him. Oh, thanks. I'm not him. That's funny too, because I remember in high school I got confused with this kid. So in the ninth grade, like everyone's started calling me Ninja Man. That was my nickname in high school. And it was this other kid. I think he knew a little bit of martial arts or whatever, but apparently he got into some fight in the cafeteria and he did a backflip off the lunch table and then kicked someone, and everyone thought that was me. I was like, no, that wasn't me. I said, that sounds awesome. I said, but that wasn't me because I don't know how to backflip. I said, but that definitely sounds like something that I would do. But no, I was like, that wasn't me. He said, I did Gracie BJJ for a hobby for 3.5 years. Was still a white belt with two stripes. Hard to earn belts. Yeah, I've heard. Like I said, that from what I understand, that it takes an average of 10 years to earn a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Although I've heard there are some places that kind of give you an instant black belt, um, if you're training to fight for competition. Like there's a place here in Maryland that my friend told me about because he trains in MMA. I mean, and competes like as an amateur. He told me it's the school you go to, and within a few weeks to a few months, you will earn your black belt, which sounds sketchy. But he was saying that it's really intense, it's somewhat of a cult going to this gym. But he was saying it's like, um, it's an intense experience. I don't know exactly what's going on, but he said even he don't think he would do it. And he's trained for a long time in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and MMA. But there are some places I think that you can earn a black belt in BJJ in route to actually competing. But I don't know any more specifics about that. Oh, no problem using speed. Okay, but yeah, I don't know if you've heard of that since you've trained MMA. If any of you guys have heard that there's like these places where you can earn like a belt, a BJJ black belt en route to actually competing in like submission grappling or in MMA. That sounds weird, but I know if you're not going that route, that the average is like 10 years to achieve a black belt. And I think most people who go to BJJ training usually drop out once they earn their blue belt. I think most people consider themselves enough of an expert once they reach blue belt status. But anyway, let's get into some more myths. So I mentioned the honorable geisha, which is the so-called female samurai, which didn't really exist, other than maybe one example. I mentioned that ninjutsu wasn't a martial art, and there was no historical ninjas. I mentioned that no touch knockouts don't really work because chi is bullshit. um, I mentioned that running away in a self-defense situation is dangerous and not. Oops, I just reconnected, guys. Sorry about that. Um, so before I go into my next myth, let me read what Eric Roca said. He said America has always been weird with contact sports. It's controversial to teach kids how to throw an effective punch for self-defense because of violence, but football gets a pass and head injuries. Yeah, so when you look at it, um, so they've actually shown behavioral statistics, excuse me, behavioral statistics for the most injurious sports that causes brain damage, and it was football. It was football. Um, but boxing was up there too. It was like football, boxing, and soccer. I think those were the most injurious ones. But I don't know if those took account of things like kickboxing and Muay Thai, since those weren't that widely practiced when they probably did those statistical analyses. But football was number one, definitely, and boxing was up there with number two, ahead of like other martial arts. And then I think soccer as well. I don't know if soccer was number three or if it was just in the top 10, but those are some of the most violent sports. What I will say about boxing though is um, it would be more effective if you were serious about your kid learning how to defend themselves in a violent environment. Boxing would be the place to go. Either boxing, Muay Thai, or kickboxing, or BJJ. Those would be the four. Because basically, for the most part, combat sports teach you to fight because they don't have the time to to teach you how to fight over 10 years. Like traditional martial arts, it's a longer learning curve. Like you can learn to fight eventually in karate and taekwondo and judo, but it takes too long, which is why they're not great in for teaching in the military, because you need something that people can pick up right away that they can use in close quarters combat. And I think combat sports fits that role better than traditional martial arts. Um, but yeah, I can understand some people maybe not wanting their kid to take up boxing because they think it'll lead to brain damage. That's fine. That's cool. But at the same time, you can't say that you want them to learn self-defense and then you enroll them in some karate class where all they do is practice kata. So I think you're gonna have to. There has to be some risk of violence in that kid learning how to fight, because if when they're fighting on the street, do you think the enemy's going to care about the kid's safety? Obviously not. It's quite the opposite. They're looking to hurt the person as much as possible. And the only way to learn how to deal with someone trying to hurt you is being in an environment where you can train to do um, controlled violence. So that's yeah. But yeah, on to the next myth, guys. Like I said, it was a bunch of them in my on my channel that I've listed over the last 2 years, and I can't even remember all of them. So I said the ninja. I said the code. Oh yeah, and I said also the code of Bushido's bullshit because it was literally invented by a Japanese man who was educated and raised in Japan, and then he basically plagiarized the chivalry code of medieval knights and made a Japanese version of it, and then Imperial Japan at the time spread the myth of Bushido as Japanese propaganda, but there was not a code of Bushido for samurai, which also lead. I think that code of Bushido is what leads people to believe there was a separate clandestine bunch of warriors that were ninjas, because people didn't think that things like espionage or assassination would be proper to a samurai, which is so far from the truth. They would have done whatever they were asked at the behest of their lord, So Bushido's another myth that's just crap. Um, Talked about chi, no touch knockouts. Oh, here's another one that I should mention: the so-called sixth sense. I don't know if I did a video about this, but if I haven't, I might do a separate video on that. There's no so-called sixth sense in martial arts, or or generally, that that gives rise to you being able to evade attacks and stuff like again like on Dragon Ball Z, where you can just sense the person through the ether and they like no, that doesn't happen. There's no sixth sense. if if I were to be charitable, I would say that the sixth sense might be based on some of our logical intuitions, but our logical intuitions come through comes through expertise, not through something mystical. Um, and when I say logical intuitions, I'm not talking about anything mystical. I'm just talking about our ability to make unconscious inferences, which is something well known in cognitive science. Um, it's basically your ability to draw inferences from data without consciously thinking about it. It's something known in perceptual psychology. It's more of a a reflex like mechanism that draws on, like I said, your basically your mind doing inductive inferences without you being consciously aware of it. It and it usually comes through like some sort of expertise or skill in something. So for the biggest example of like using your logical intuition in a given situation is being able to make reliable left hand turns in traffic. That's not really something they can teach you in driving school. It's something that you pick up from driving from years of experience, that you can reliably make a left hand turn in traffic. That's a good example. Now, do people able to draw upon their intuitions or unconscious references, say in a fighting capacity? Yeah, and that's what fighters refer to as fight IQ. There's no sixth sense thing like people used to talk about in martial arts, and like a lot of these hokey traditional martial arts, these Bushido styles. The fight IQ comes through years of experience in fighting, right? And not every martial artist is going to develop it unless they actually are, going to the mat or fighting in the ring. They're not going to develop that fight IQ. Just like if you're not a person who drives all the time, you're not going to learn how to reliably make left hand turns during traffic. That that sort of intuition comes through experience, that you've done it so much that you can make an unconscious inference in when to do it and when not to. But there's no sixth sense. If anything, there's actually nine bodily senses that all people can do. Um, And some physiologists argue that there's more than nine senses, but there's at least nine senses. We know most people know of five of them. You know, sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. But you have others. You have your sense of balance or your vestibular sense, which comes through a fluid that's in your ear that gives you a sense of being able to balance. And for folks who are unaware of the vestibular sense, just as anyone who's suffered from dizziness, and they'll tell you that when they go to a doctor, the doctor will often say that there might be something off in the inner ear fluid, that there might have been like some little micro crystallization in that fluid that's causing them to become dizzy and nauseated when they move around. Um, so that's that sense. There's another sense that's useful for athletes, which is the kinesthetic sense or bodily awareness. It's basically your sense of your awareness in your surroundings. It's something highly developed in professional athletes like football players and basketball players, that they can sense where their other teammates are on the field so they can throw them a pass without even having to look in their direction. They know where all their teammates are on the field at a given time during the game. That's through your kinesthetic sense. Then what's some other ones? You have a pain sense or nociception. So just like you have a touch, a sense of touch, you have a sense of pain or nociception. That should be pretty obvious, right? That you know it's certain pain receptors that go off when damage is being done to the body. So that's a sense. Then you have a sense of heat. Again, that should be common sense too. Like when you when something on your body comes in contact with something this relatively hot, there are heat receptors that will react to it. Okay, and how many is that? Right, that's six, seven, eight, six. Oh, so that yeah, so that's all nine of them. And like I said, there's some physiologists that argue that there's more than nine bodily senses, but those are the nine, and none of them refer to this whole mystic sixth sense that has been taught in bullshit martial arts. A case in point of when people claim there's a sixth sense and there isn't, it's like the old ninjutsu training where the guy will have the boken, or if not, well, probably not a boken because it's a wooden sword. They'll probably use the shinai, which is a bamboo sword, but they'll have it and they'll raise it, and then they'll have the person kneeling below them, and they're supposed to feel when the guy is going to bring the shinai down on their head and roll out of the way just in time to show that they have a sixth sense. Complete bullshit. And almost every time a person is whacked right on the head, usually the time when they do evade it is because the teacher actually favors the student, because maybe it's his head student, or maybe it's a student that he just wants to see get ahead in the class. So he'll actually give a motion to let the person know to roll away. So instead of just immediately bringing the shinai down on his head, he'll he'll over exaggerate the motion, like before bringing it down, giving the person a chance to roll out of time. I mean, to roll away just in time to show that he has a sixth sense, that he's ready to move on to become a master ninja or whatever, which is bullshit. And it wasn't just done in the jiu-jitsu schools. I saw it done in the hapkido school when I was a kid, which is why I decided not to train in this place. Um, After I left Taekwondo, I was still looking to continue formal schooling, and I found this hapkido place, and so they were given a demonstration, and then the instructor and his assistant instructor decided to just demonstrate their ability to use the sixth sense or martial art intuition, and the guy was supposed to roll away when he brought the shinai down. He just kept whacking him on the head every single time. I was like, yeah, this looks goofy. I'm not doing it. So that's another myth, that there's a mystical sixth sense used in martial arts. Um, Eric Brooks said, Eric Roca says the samurai weren't really honorable, just some rich guys, armed thugs. Yeah, exactly. Well, I won't say they were all armed thugs. They were a noble class of warriors, like the knights of similar to the medieval knights. Like medieval knights were had to be lords themselves. They were typically most medieval knights were barons, um, or of a higher or maybe of a higher nobility than barons, but at least most of them were barons, right? And samurai were a warrior class of nobles. But when they during the Meiji era, when they were disbanded, a lot of them did end up becoming bandits or Ronin mercenaries. Ronin being samurai with no lord. Some of these Ronin became mercenaries, some became bandits. During the Meiji era when they disbanded the samurai class. But yeah, there was nothing particularly honorable about them. They they did whatever was at the behest of their warlord. Um, so the code of Bushido was just a myth. Like I say, it was started through imperial propaganda at the time because Japan, used that as sort of their as a template for their soldiers to go by, um, pre World War II era, right? And it was started by a Japanese guy who was educated and raised in Europe, and basically plagiarized the chivalry code of medieval um, European knights. Dawson says, "Have you ever been told that I look like Edward Snowden?" No, because he's white. Look nothing like him. That's goofy. um, Eric Rogan says the closest thing to the Sixth Sense historically were Viking or barbarians taking mushrooms and other psychedelics to go on rage-fueling killing sprees. Well, I won't say that's Sixth Sense. I would say that was like your berserk, like that was like a berserker rage. And there's been other, military personnel throughout history that have done stuff to like psych them up for war, whether it was using drugs, um, having sex, um, getting wasted, like with like drinking or whatever, or having like a big feast before battle. Um, but no, when I'm talking about Sixth Sense, I'm talking about people claiming that there's a specific like sense of 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 premonition, basically. When I'm talking about Sixth Sense, I'm talking about like premonition, like the Spidey sense, or Daredevil's radial sense. Like that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Sixth Sense. I'm talking about like they're talking about premonition. I'm saying there is no premonition that exists as far as we know in cognitive science. But I was saying there is a actual like logical intuition that we all have, but that's just basically something well known in perceptual psychology for our ability to do unconscious inferences, and that's usually based on people who are pretty like well grounded in some particular field, like in like if you're talking about um prize fighters having a good fight IQ, but it's not a sixth sense. Like there's no premonition that they can sense what the other person is doing and stuff like that. That's just weird. I wish there was. Like most of these things that people believe in martial arts are sort of the things you wish was true as a kid, like watching Dragon Ball Z. You wish there was like a sixth sense of premonition, or that you could like manipulate chi in your body to use it as a weapon against people or use it as a shield against attacks. But none of that stuff is really true, and I think adult martial artists who still believe that stuff is goofy, especially in the era of the internet. CJ Johnson says, I used to hate doing cardio and was a slow runner, but ever since Diddy started chasing after me, my running has improved. Yeah, you don't want him running, but like, take that, take that, take that, take that, take that. Part if Diddy invites you to a party, you gotta say no. We just saw on CNN what he used to do to Cassie, so that's true. But no, seriously, whether you're a slow runner or a fast runner, you can pick the type of running that fits your style. Like I do slow pace long running, like my 10-kilometer runs. I'll mix sprints into them, but for the most part, it's just a slow, steady run. But on other times, I'll do like a fast run as well, as a separate run later on during the day, like somewhere between like 2 miles or something like that. Galo Lopez says, "How old were you when you realized you wanted to change your gender to male?" I don't know, about the same age when your mother started taking it in the ass. Rob says, "This guy stole my bike. Can I have my bike back, thief?" I don't know what you guys talking about. Yeah, they definitely want to smoke. Like, I don't take them serious, Eric, because like I said, at the end of the day, I can fight, so none of these people would be approaching me in real life. Like, a lot of these dudes are just trolls. Many of them are minors who have nothing else better to do, or they're just people who with neck beards sitting in their basement thinking they're being clever because they don't have anything else better to do. Personally, I'm not going to go on someone's live stream and troll. I can just go watch TV or play a video game if I'm not a video gamer, but if I was a video gamer, I could play video games or go watch anime or literally a dozen other things than troll people. It, it's obviously something wrong with the mental health of people who think that's funny. I mean, not funny, but people who have time to waste like that. Micro Mork says, I heard an old folks tale of a retired samurai who was disgraced by his fellow clan for killing the child of one of their lord's targets. He left to go wander the Japanese forest alone, and one day he was exploring the forest and came across a great untold chest full of big gay, whatever. I'll say this: there, when I was in the Philippines, I was watching CNN Philippines. That was a good news channel. I'm sad they took that off the air last year because their ratings were so low, and I think their ratings were only so low because a lot of their broadcasts were done in English, and a lot of local Filipinos don't like seeing their news in English. They rather it be in Tagalog. But they were talking about there was a guy who was a World War II veteran from Japan who was still living in the forest of the Philippines up until like I think maybe the 2000s. Like he was just a guy still surviving in the wild for like 60, I guess almost 60 years. I don't know if he's alive today, but um, that's the closest to the thing you were talking about in that that long joke of yours, that long-winded joke of yours. But yeah, so we defeated the whole sixth sense or idea of premonition, and a lot of this goes with guys just learning skepticism because unfortunately there's a lot of people in martial arts that believe zany ideas, and a lot of this stuff, a lot of things can get passed off in martial arts, particularly when you go to like say some I'll just be less, since I'm being blunt this whole video, I'm not going to stop here. Some people will believe anything that comes out of an Asian guy's mouth. Let's be honest. But I've always been a skeptical person, so regardless of what your background is, I'm not going to believe you just because of your particular background. So, for instance, when I was going to college at University of Maryland, there was a martial arts school right at the corner where the campus shopping center was, and I went to go check it out because I was like, hey, I'd like to take up martial arts while I'm at school. When I went there, it was this Vietnamese guy who ran the school, and it looked cool. Like it looked like they were doing something akin to like kickboxing or Muay Thai. It looked like a mix of different styles with an emphasis on like kickboxing or Muay Thai or something of that nature. But then the guy, was giving me a walk through his gym and telling me more about him. And he went on to claim that he taught the founders of karate Judo, and Aikido, not knowing I'm not an idiot. Like, I've been reading about martial arts since I was a kid, and I knew that even if he's like in his 50s or 60s, he wouldn't be old enough to have taught the founders of modern karate, judo, or aikido. Like, these all of these martial arts were developed at the turn of the 20th century. Like, the founder of modern day karate was Gichin Funakashi, who developed Shotokan karate. The founder of judo was Jigoro Kano, um, which happened around that same time as well. And then there was the founder of Aikido, Morihei Yoshiba. Steven Seagal claimed he trained under him too, which is completely bullshit because he he wouldn't have even been a little kid when Morihei was teaching people. But more, we already know Steven Seagal is a huge liar anyway. But yeah, this Vietnamese guy couldn't have been no older than 60. This is, and let's say this is like in 2000, right? Claiming 99, 2000. He showed me these documents too to prove that. Oh, and of course he claimed he taught Bruce Lee. I already had a background in Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do, so you're not gonna. I already know who Bruce's like influences, and he only had one formal instructor, which was Shigung Yip Man Lee. I say Shigung because um, anything that comes under Jeet Kune Do and Wing Chun is our lineage. So, being he's our founder's teacher, I would address him as Shigung as instead of Shifu. But yeah, Shigung Yip Man Lee like was Bruce's only formal instructor. He learned with other people, but that was his only formal instructor when he was 13 and took up Wing Chun. He also did a little bit of Tai Chi under his father, and then started learning other kung fu styles from other people when he came to America. But this guy claiming that he taught Bruce Lee and the founders of karate, judo, and aikido, I just couldn't take him seriously. So I didn't even go back to his gym, and it was a shame too because the school actually looked like they knew what they were doing. I actually ended up sparring a Marine who trained at that school while I was at school. We were actually stationed in the same place at Fort Detrick. He was part of a light, not light infantry, um, light assault vehicles or something. I don't know if it was light assault vehicles, something like that. But he was in a Marine Reserve unit where they did like lightly armored vehicles or something like that. Whereas my unit, when I was in reserves, also at Fort Detrick, was a we did cable, telephone installation, and maintain and maintenance. But we we shared the same building. Half of it was for the Marines, half of it was for us. We got along with them well, and so it just was interesting. We were both students at University of Maryland, and that he learned martial arts at the school, and we sparred. And he was like, "Yeah, most people don't want to spar with me." He said, "Cause I like to spar." He said, "I don't like to spar using um any padding or anything like that." I was like, "I don't care. Let's go." So we sparred, and it was cool. Like, he basically couldn't. I just kept doing a lot of head movements, so he really couldn't nail me with anything. But he was a cool guy. He was also an Asian dude, built. I think he was bigger than me at the time, and it just turned me off from that school because it probably would have been a good place to learn, but I couldn't learn from someone who was peddling so much bullshit. Eric Lapointe says, I've seen that he taught survival skills somewhere after that. I still use one of his techniques. He was singing in the rain to get past it. I farm, so I'm out in the rain all the time. Okay. The man in the Philippines, but the difference is I listen to music in the pouring rain and it makes it way more tolerable. Just like I'll go run in the rain, so, and I'm pretty sure people look at me like I'm crazy, but I was in the army, so we went out training in the rain all the time. If it ain't raining, we ain't training. So that didn't bother me. Guys, I'm about to wrap this up soon. There's a bunch of other myths we can get into, but no one has really like talked about many that so far. But Sunsuku Rider says Bruce Lee W. That's right. But yeah, that so like I said, there's a bunch of the martial arts myths out there. Oh, here's one. You guys know that Jackie Chan doesn't really do all his stunts, right? That is a myth. Bill Superfoot Wallace dispelled that because he actually starred in one of Jackie Chan's early movies, and he said the man did a lot of his own stunts, but he didn't do all of his stunts. Like that became some myth within the martial arts community that Jackie Chan does all his stunts, and he was like, to Jackie's credit, like that wasn't a myth that he started. That was like people around him that started that myth that he does all his own stunts. He's never done all his own stunts. He does do a lot of them, but he's never done all of them, which would just be crazy. Milk says, "What is your opinion on Poland Dublin's military spending? It will be raising it to 4% of its GDP, which is the highest of NATO and the European Union percentage wise, not the most money." I don't know. I don't have anything to say about that in this chat. This is strictly about martial arts myths and McDojos and Bushido. I can't talk on global events right now that I don't really know anything about, to be honest. Only thing I know is that the U.S. just sent out a lot of money to to foreign allies that could be used much better here. Like they sent 100 billion to Ukraine, sent like I don't know how many billion to Israel, and then another billion to Taiwan, all to fight proxy wars against our foreign adversaries. Um, Russia, Iran, and China. It was a waste of money. Like that $150 billion could have been better spent here. No, no, that's no problem. I was just saying this. The content of this conversation was strictly about martial arts myths and like things like crazy beliefs in the martial arts that people believe. But I can't really talk on what's going on in NATO and Poland because I really haven't kept abreast of it. But yeah, if you got, do you guys know of any other zany martial arts myths? Like I said, there's literally so many. Before I go, let me actually look at some of the old ones I've talked about, and I can mention those really quick and let so in case people want to, look at those themselves, they can do that. But again, I've mentioned like the Onabo Geisha running, that Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is overrated. Um, um, the myth that Jeet Kune Do was only fencing, boxing, and Wing Chun Kung Fu, which is a lie. I mentioned that you can't just run away from fights. Um, I mentioned that ninjutsu wasn't a real martial art. And I mentioned that Bushido wasn't a real code of conduct amongst samurai. Let me see, because they're like I said, I have quite a few others that we can show here. Well, I mean that I can talk about before we go. Oh, here's another one that needs to be talked about. Women's self defense is bullshit. And I know there were some women in the chat room earlier. I don't know if you're still here besides Mrs. Contrarian, but women's self defense is bullshit. If women are going to learn how to defend themselves, they need to be taught exactly as the men, because a lot of the stuff that's taught as women's self defense is gimmicky, like relying on just a few tools that may not always be useful, like groin kick and eye jab. Like, okay, what if you're in a position where you can't eye jab the person, or they're protecting themselves so that you can't kick them in the balls. They need to know how to fight. They can't just rely on gimmicks. Then on top of that, they do these little live, they do these little goofy drills when they need to be sparring, just like the guys do. Like basically, teaching a woman to fight would be like teaching a smaller man to fight. Like basically, they're going to have to overcome their smaller size by being more aggressive. That's the key to women's self defense. But these women's self defense courses are complete bullshit. And I think it's giving women a false sense of confidence that will get them hurt in real life if they actually have to go against a grown man who's like 6'2", 200 pounds. Like those gimmicks aren't useful. So women's self defense courses are largely bullshit. Um, what's another? Oops. I'm actually looking at my old listing, guys. That's why you see me turned away looking at something. I'm actually looking at the stuff that I've previously like did videos about. I'm not gonna go over all of them. We've already talked about a lot of them briefly. Oh, here's one. Here's for the my two A bros, my Second Amendment guys. Um, and most of these guys know this, but it's a few. The ones who don't know this stuff are the ones who can't fight. So there's a select bunch of people who own guns who say I don't need to know how to fight. I'll just shoot you. Yeah, okay, you can shoot someone, but that's not self defense. Like to use your gun in a self defense capacity, usually you're usually talking about using it within a confined space. And any tactical firearm instructor is going to tell you that you need to know how to do hand to hand combat. And I've mentioned this before too. Like the like just shoot if you're shooting at someone from a distance, usually that's not self defense unless you've seen someone draw on you and you basically are relying on your speed to draw faster than them and counter shoot them. That's the only time you're really gonna see like people just shooting from a distance and can be considered self-defense. But for the most part, self-defense with a gun is going to come at a closer range in close quarters combat. And for that, you're going to have to learn hand-to-hand combat. And most of these licensed firearm instructors are basically going to teach you something akin to wrestling to be trained in tactical firearm skills. So the whole thing of saying I'll just shoot someone, I don't need to learn how to fight is bullshit. And basically all you're doing by not knowing how to fight and having a gun is basically you're giving the enemy incentive to take your gun. Yeah, the gun is not it's not a substitute for learning how to fight. It's a supplement. Plus, you can't, again, like I mentioned with the concealed carry, you can't take your gun everywhere, but you can take these fists everywhere. You can take these hands. These hand these hands are rated E for everyone. So those go everywhere. I'm saying, yeah, even with a pistol, like the best concealed carry, Eric, is like a appendix carry. I would argue from what a lot of people have told me is better than having your basic sidearm 3 o'clock carry. The appendix carry is the fastest you can draw, but like I said, you can't take that everywhere. There's a lot of a lot of different institutions that won't allow you to walk in there with a firearm, especially depending on your state. And if you live somewhere, even in places like Texas, which allows constitutional carry, there's still places you can't bring your gun. Very few, but there's some places even there you can't take it. Um, So yeah, having a gun is not a replacement for learning how to fight, guys. You still have to learn how to fight. So that's another myth that should be dispelled. Um. Oh, here's one: situation awareness. There's a lot, just like the goofy claim that um if someone tries to attack you, just run away. There's another goofy claim that says, oh, you should use situation awareness. Okay, and so are you just supposed to be looking around everywhere you go, just being paranoid, like, huh, someone could pop out of the bushes? No, like it's not realistic. Like situational awareness has to be relative to there actually being some sort of sense of danger out there. Um, Let me answer Milk. So, he asked if you were walking down the street and some guy attacked you, would you aim to disarm them or would you aim to hurt them and get away? It depends. Are you talking about gun disarm or knife disarm? Because those are different. If it's a gun, I'm not going to try to disarm a person. That would be the last thing that I do because gun disarms, even done by experts, is only 50-50. I would say at best they're 50-50. And those are by the experts. But people who aren't practicing gun disarms every day, it's less than a 50-50 chance that it would be effective. And you are better at just submitting and giving them what they want than to try to disarm them. You're gonna end up in heaven trying to do those gun disarms. You be like, yep. So I grab it, then all of a sudden you're gonna see Saint Peter at the gate saying, "Yeah, that technique didn't work out for you too well, did it?" And you be like, "But I did it. I did it the way they showed me." Keep trying those gun disarms, you're gonna meet Saint Peter or whatever is the person that you believe you will see in the afterlife. So yeah, no. Now knife disarms work, but you should anticipate that you're going to get cut when you're doing a knife disarm. Now I do Filipino martial arts, so I know that I would fight back against someone with a knife because most people on the street don't know how to use a knife, but in the way that they do use it is usually is usually they usually do sneak attacks, which is what makes someone so dangerous with a knife. Most of the time, they're not going to just come brandishing a knife in front of you. They're going to use a sneak attack when you're not expecting it. And most of the times, looking at the security footage shown with knife attacks, usually what they will do when they approach you, they're going to have one arm. They're going to have one arm reaching out to you while they're secretly having the knife from the back that they're gonna actually attack you with. The hands standing out in front of you is to keep you focused on that hand and not focused on the other hand that's bringing out the knife that's about to attack you. And usually it's going to be a rapid stabbing motion that they're going to use against you. It's not going to be some overhand like they teach you in the traditional martial arts where you do an X block to stop this overhand knife attack. That's not how most attacks go. Most attacks by most untrained people is they're going to reach out with you with a free hand to distract you, and then they're going to reach with their other hand to get their knife and stab you repeatedly, either in the head, neck, chest, stomach, side. And at that moment, you're going to have to learn how to rush in with explosive force to stop that knife hand. You're still going to have to address the hand that's in front of you. Okay, you're going to have to blitz them. Some people might try to do a double leg takedown. That's iffy. You can go for a double leg takedown if you're well trained enough. If you're well trained enough in BJJ or wrestling, you might want to shoot for this double leg takedown. That can be iffy. I'm gonna go for the more tactical way I've been shown how to handle that situation. But you should incorporate getting cut. The important thing is to not get cut anywhere vital, because you're probably gonna get stabbed and you're not gonna even notice it until after the fight has ended, which usually ends within a matter of seconds. The important thing is that wherever you end up cut is that it's not a vital area that will leave you leaking. So if we're talking about someone who approaches me with a knife, I'm going to I'm going to I'm going to hurt them, and I'm going to hurt them badly. And depending on what I have, I always have EDC or everyday carry weapons on me whenever I go out. Always, even if it's just pepper spray. But I'll have a tactical flashlight. I have a taser. I'll have my balisong knife. I'll have my knife my belt knife, this this hidden into my belt buckle. I'll have my my army service knife. I'll have my Manriki fighting chain. Um, I might have my brass knuckles. And many other little EDC weapons that I have. I'm always gonna have an EDC weapon on me. So if someone attacks me with a knife, they're gonna get the fight of their life. If they have a gun though, I'm just gonna do what they say. I'm be like, I'm sorry, sir. Here's my wallet. Here's my phone. Please take them, and and I'll go. I'm not gonna fight someone with a gun. It's just not bright. And I don't care how much Krav Maga you've done. Yeah, situation. Like I said, I'm not. No. So when I say the myth of situational awareness, I'm not saying that situational awareness doesn't exist. It absolutely exists. Situational awareness taps into what I said. It's called kinesthetic body awareness. That is an actual bodily sense. What I'm saying is that a lot of these self defense gurus have overhyped it, like that you can use that in place of knowing how to fight. Basically saying like if you have situational awareness, you can avoid situations without having to get into situations where you'll have to protect yourself. That was my point, Eric, was that I wasn't saying situational awareness doesn't exist. It definitely exists. I'm saying that too many self defense gurus act like that you can use situational awareness without actually having to know how to fight. And at the end of the day, whether you have a gun or whether you are the most situationally aware person in the world, you still have to know how to fight. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, because I definitely believe in situation awareness, and there's simple things you can do to increase your situation awareness every day, guys. So for one, when you're walking somewhere, stop having your face glued into your phone. Stop looking. How many people do you see just walking around with their face like this, about to cross the street, can get hit by a car, and they just that's not good situation awareness. So one of the things to increase your situation awareness is not looking down, not be staring into your phone when you're walking around. You're making yourself a target, and if there are people out there to 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 look for an easy target, they're gonna look for the people who aren't aware of their surroundings, who sit there just glued into their phone, just doing that. That's that's bad situation. So you should definitely have situation awareness. What I am saying is that too many self defense gurus act like you can use situational awareness in place of actually knowing how to fight. And there's nothing that replaces knowing how to fight. There's like I've preached many times. There's two main aspects of self-defense. One is being physically fit, and the other is knowing how to fight. And you can't replace either one of those by gimmicks. I don't get what those emojis are for. I see the turkey, and I don't know what the other thing is, like a pelican or something. But I don't get I don't get the joke. So Milk says, let's just say there's no weapons. They just attack you. Oh, then I'm beating the shit out of them. They're playing. That's that's yeah. I'm not running away from someone who doesn't who's coming at me barehanded. In any given physical confrontation, it's gonna be it's gonna be 50-50. But being that the average person on the street isn't trained, but I have the advantage. I'm physically fit, but I hide it by what I wear. So I'm not going to be walking around in like muscle tees and stuff like that, trying to look all swole or whatever. I want people to underestimate me, which is a if you know the Art of War by Sun Tzu, one of the strategies of overcoming an adversary is having them underestimate you. But yeah, if someone isn't armed and they just decide they want to attack me, I'm going to beat the living shit out of them. Most of the time, though, another self defense thing you can do besides being situationally aware by not being glued to your cell phone or tablet is that people will try to people will try to stare you down, and basically they're trying to see if they can get you to submit by looking away, which to them is a sign that you're a sign of intimidation. So if you're like at a McDonald's or something like that, or just going about in your everyday, and people start staring at you, look right back at them. And I'm not saying do anything aggressive like what the hell are you looking at? Because if you do that, now you're provoking them. You don't want to provoke the person staring at you, but you want to stare back to let them know, yes, I see you looking at me, and I'm looking back at you to know that I recognize that you're looking at me. And once they realize that you are aware of what's going on and what their intentions are, most of the time they're not going to attack you. But if someone's staring at you and then you look away, they're gonna think you're an easy mark. So um, that goes into situational awareness. When you see people eyeing you as a potential mark, look back at them to let them know that you realize what they're doing, what their intentions are. So my facade changes. I go from being this little unassuming nice guy smiling like yeah, to, and like I said, it's nothing like I'm not bluffing or anything like that. I'm just letting you be aware that I see what your intentions are, and I'm ready for it. So, to answer your question, if someone intends to attack me, I will I will protect myself. I'm not running away. Now, obviously, they're not going to do it where there would be like law enforcement or somewhere that I can go for help. They're probably going to try to attack me in a place where I would be particularly vulnerable, like in some confined space or somewhere where it's dark. Again, to reduce those situations, one, I stay physically fit every day. Two, I keep everyday carry weapons on me. And three, I'm trained to fight. So if it goes down, I will protect myself. To answer your question. But guys, it is 12. I need to go. I'm not even. I was hoping Mrs. Contrarian was going to warn me when it turned midnight. She might be busy, but she is still moderating. I might give one last one before we go though. I've talked about a lot of I talked about a lot of myths and Bushido and McDojos. Um, we talked about BJJ isn't the best martial art. It's a great martial art, but it's not the best. There's no one best martial art. All right, Milk. Have good time. Thanks for chiming in. I hope I answered your question. If you're worried about self defense, go take some training. Start getting fit. Go for a daily jog. Start doing push ups, sit ups, pull ups, or get a gym membership wherever you are. Okay, but I appreciate it. I'm about to go as well, guys. It's midnight and I am hungry. um, and I pretty much went over everything. If there was another thing I would also briefly talk about, um, I also want to talk about MMA. There's a lot of traditional martial artists that try to say that MMA isn't good for self defense because it only works in the ring or in the octagon, what have you. Obviously, that's not true. Combat sports are the most effective forms of self defense outside of firearms. But traditional martial artists know that their bread and butter is teaching kids that they can defend themselves. But it's just BS. First of all, um, if someone is definitely scared of bullies and stuff like that, they shouldn't have to wait 5 years before they can actually use their techniques to be able to defend themselves. You want to be able to use it within like 2 months or less. Um, Combat sports gives you the shortest learning curve. like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, kickboxing, and wrestling. All of these things you can learn and be able to defend yourselves within 2 months. 2 months of karate, judo, taekwondo, any 2 months is not going to be enough for you to defend yourselves using those arts, those traditional arts, because they're watered down and stretched out so that you have to learn it over a long time in order to become effective in it. So, and of course, all these combat sports are used in MMA. And so, yeah, MMA would be one of the most effective styles for self defense. So, I don't get these traditional martial artists trying to lie to people and say that MMA isn't good for self defense. It's one of the best ways of learning self defense, especially in a shorter amount of time, which is what most people need it for. Um, the other On the other end of things, I hate that some people have started teaching MMA as a style and not as a sport. MMA started off as a sport that utilized different styles as the ones I just mentioned: Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, boxing, and wrestling. Sometimes people say judo, but not really judo. Judo isn't as I love judo. It's my first martial art, but it's not as effective as BJJ or wrestling is, because the ground game just isn't there. But in any case, there are some rather mediocre MMA gyms nowadays teaching MMA as a style, which means instead of going to the MMA gym and they having a class for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and a class for Muay Thai and maybe a class for wrestling or like Kyokushin karate and stuff like that and boxing, is that they'll all combine it as one thing that they teach the class. And that when they do that, it makes it is so those styles become so watered down so that you can be a jack of all trades that you don't become particularly good in any one of them. Your Muay Thai is gonna suck, your Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is gonna suck, your wrestling is gonna suck, and your boxing is gonna suck. And we already know that a lot of MMA guys are horrible in boxing. And that's because to get good in boxing, you need to go to a boxing gym. So, so like I said, on one hand, MMA is great for self defense. Don't ever listen to traditional martial artists tell you otherwise. On the other hand, MMA gyms that teach MMA as a style instead of as a sport aren't going to be very good places to learn. So I think I'll end it with that. It could have been other stuff that we talked about, but that covered a lot of stuff within almost 3 hours, and I think most people are getting off so they can wind up, so they can tie off their day, as I should be doing. So thanks, guys. Thanks to everyone that chatted with me. Thanks again to Mrs. Contrarian. Please, guys, um, no, say thank you to Mrs. Contrarian as our moderator. um, and if you guys have any more questions or comments after this video is posted, just like all the other ones, you can leave comments afterwards, and I'll pick those up. If you have like specific questions or concerns, you can email me. The link will be in my bio. So I'm gonna call it a day, guys. Thanks. I thought this would be a fun topic.